Aloha everyone, young and old, and thank you for watching our program today. Sparky Would Go, a Kauai talk show for the whole family. United States Senator Spark Matsunaga was born on October 8, 1916, and raised on Kauai, Hawaii. Born Masayuki Matsunaga, the beloved Sparky nickname was given to him by his elementary school friends. Sparky liked the name so much, though, that he legally added it to his birth name after World War II. If we emphasize the life and works of our greatest contributors, people will come to realize that moral courage is bravery of the highest type, and America will be called the champion of peace. Sparky was a political visionary who dedicated his life to peace and a united world. This program series honors those people and organizations who are living examples of how to persevere through the hard times, showing us that our lives are worth living. Aloha everybody, my name's Mark Jeffers. Welcome to Sparky Would Go. This is the history show of our beautiful state of Hawaii, and it's in honor of our dearly beloved former United States Senator Spark M. Matsunaga. So welcome on board. We've got a great show for you today because we're going to talk about someone who's not with us anymore, but we have so many memories and so much fond aloha for this person, and you're going to learn about him too. So buckle up, stay tuned, and here we go. Today we're talking about Makia Malo.
Makia Malo.
And Makia Malo is a person that is from the land. He's a kama'aina, maka'ainana, and he's a person who we came to know. And you're going to meet our great storyteller, Jeff. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Makia, because that's where we're jumping off from, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Makia was born in 1934. Okay. His first name was Elroy, and he was raised in Papakolea, which is, for you people who are from Honolulu, easy to remember. It's where that big bridge goes from the Punch Bowl Cemetery up into the Tentless Mountains, right there at Papakolea Homestead. And he was born in 1934, and his childhood weekends, for example, were spent driving all the way to Laie, to the taro patches, where his family would malama the taro and bring home, hopefully, plenty of taro and poi to feeding themselves. And, of course, as Hawaiians, you got to feed your neighbors too, right? So, and he had stories that we learned about his childhood that were so amazing, probably not unlike many Hawaiian boys growing up in Honolulu, sledding down the grasses at Punch Bowl Cemetery, waiting in the background of the Chinese cemetery where the Chinese people put their offerings on their families' graves, and just waiting till they left, and then maybe enjoying some of that, sharing some of that ho'okupu, if you will, for the Chinese people who had passed away. And then, of course, he had two brothers and one sister, right? And he was a person who, at 12 years old, was diagnosed with leprosy. And that is really, I think, the twist in his life story, and certainly the twist in where we're going. And I would like to introduce to you now my dear friend and storyteller person, Mr. Jeff Gere. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Oh, Makia Malo. What a character.
Yeah.
Massive, like the size of a size of a building, like a refrigerator, moved with big cumbering steps, not too good at balancing, fingers stumped, eyes gone because he had glasses on the whole time.
Right.
Big, lumbering, all Hawaiian, totally Hawaiian, and affected by the disease.
At 12 years old, he was lifted surgically, if you will, from his family home and taken directly to Kalaupapa.
Landed at the airport in that peninsula, that remote place known so famously by Father Damien. His sister and 2 brothers were already there. She got the arrival time wrong. So when he arrived, all the others were embraced, and the families took them in. People kokokuas to take them into the town. The airport is a little away from the settlement of Kalaupapa. And he turned away. Picture a 12-year-old boy with 2 little suitcases looking across the ocean at Oahu, the place he just came from, so that no one would see the tears streaming down his cheeks. Till an hour later, his sister arrived.
Yay! Well, baby, why don't I start?
Yes,
because
please
I
do,
knew him
because
long
you've
time.
known him long. You knew him longer than me.
Okay, then come with
If
me.
you knew him from 1985,
Yeah.
that's
I was
years,
living
4
in
years before me.
Oahu. I was going to graduate school at Manoa in modern dance.
Fabulous.
And then I developed a relationship with Auntie Nona because she asked me to help her with her making, she'd make these chants, and she wanted, I call it kiko, make the dots, like notate it musically, the chants. So I started doing that with her, and then we became friends.
Yay.
So we started planning the show, and it was going to be about the Kamehameha dynasty. And then we were thinking, who could we do it with? I did not know Leo Anderson Okana yet. But Leo and Vicky had been students of Auntie's at
Yes.
Kamehameha.
Yes.
So I met her. She was so stunning. I remember she did Ako Lauo, and she was in a play for Kumu Kahua at that time.
Okay.
And she said, oh, this wonderful man that she knew,
Yes.
that she had done some theater with, who was blind and had leprosy and all these things, but he could do our show with us, would be good. So that was our cast. Auntie Nona, Leo, Vicky, myself, and Makia Malo.
What a great cast.
And that became his home for 40 years before he ever came back to Oahu, which is subsequently into the story we'll get into, is when I met him.
But Jeff, for our viewers, you've certainly heard the word leprosy, and you've heard about the place, Kalaupapa. But could you make the connection for us for, number one, what is leprosy? Who gets leprosy? How do they get leprosy? And, here's a Hawaiian boy, 12 years old. How did he come down with this fatal disease?
He thinks it's the family friend, a Chinese man who came around a lot, played with the kids a lot. Apparently you have a DNA predilection to catching the disease, but you have to be in close approximation with someone who has that for quite a while. It doesn't happen right away. So, like I say, his older brother, then his sister, his younger brother, and then him. And at the airport, when his mother was crying, she looked to heaven and said, "Oh God, why me?" The last words he heard from her directly.
And Kalaupapa had been a leper colony for, almost 100 years.
Well, just so we help the viewers understand, the word leper is an insult. The word leprosy is a person with a disease. Hansen's disease is the more preferred term for that people afflicted with that disease.
I remember one of the things was he had these feelings about the word leper. And he trained Anne in it. She became sensitive. So if they were traveling in an airplane and they found a magazine that had the word leper in it, they'd be calling me. They go, "Molly, you need to write a letter to the editor. These people, they use that word." Because Makia was
Right, it was offensive to him.
very offensive. He'd say, "I am not my disease. You don't call that person a measles because they have measles. I am not just leprosy. I'm way beyond that. So you shouldn't call me a leper." So I too now have that sensitivity. When I see it, I'm like, ooh, Damien the leper, whatever. I'm like, no, Makia wouldn't like that. He didn't mind the word leprosy. Say he was a person who had leprosy.
Right.
But to label him as a leper,
No.
he was very offended by that and really articulate and let people know He didn't think that was
recall
right.
that, right.
Yeah.
So you don't call somebody a leper.
Only in the Old Testament, and even then it's derogatory and pejorative, and we don't use it.
Right.
Don't.
Right. Well, now, when we're talking about Makia, we want you to know that he was able to put together a book with a friend, Pamela Yegang, and the book was called My Name is Makia. And so our story today is really all of the small things that piece together that help you to have your own story. I always tell children, I say, don't let anybody tell your story. You tell your story, right? So now, here's a person arriving at Kalaupapa. He has leprosy. It's a place of leprosy. And then his life in that world begins. Can you tell us a little bit about what was his day? What was this place called Katie's Store? And I'm sure Makia,
Katie's Store was the center of Kalaupapa. It's the place where you could buy a beer, a soda, a candy, anything like that. So everybody congregated there. That's where people hang out. They hung out a lot. Now Makia writes this poem called Katie's Store about being a little boy, and he walks by this store and looks at these old folks, all eaten by the disease, face deformed, fingers stumped, and one says, "Hey boy, come, I'd like to buy you candy. I know, I ugly, all bent up. No can help. When I first came, I like you, little pehu, little scratch. Now I all bust up. But I like aloha you. Katie, get the boy candy, give him something. I like be your friend." And Makia says, "My desire for the candy overcame my horror at these disfigured specters. And soon after eating and talking, I came to love and respect and to know that this was indeed family." Katie's Store.
Kalaupapa was a family place, and Makia had to make family, right? Now, did he live with his brothers and sisters, or how did
there was dormitories, the boys' dorm and the women's dorm, girls' dorm, and they had supervisors sort of overlooking things, and lots of people whose business it was to take care of them, lots of doctors and nurses and a staff kind of thing, but basically they were where people were thrown with this disease that they didn't know how to treat, and they didn't know where it came from, and they didn't know what to do. That was the history of this remote peninsula. It's not a place, it was where the world had abandoned them, thrown these people off. Makia loved it. He was like, I have to go to school? The books in the school were the books he had just finished in public school. He said it was just but he taught himself chemistry. Yeah. By interviewing the doctors.
Yeah.
He taught himself to play piano by ear.
Yeah.
He was in a band there. He said they were roaming around. They knew where all the mountain apples were, where all the guavas were. And
he was a hunter, right?
They were kids. That came later.
Yeah.
Story. There's two settlements. Kalaupapa is the newest one. The older one, where Father Damien rose and died, is on the other side of the peninsula. There's a heiau and a big crater in the middle of it. And then on the edge of it is a place called Mormon Pond. Mormon Pond is where all the young kids went to swim. And Makia tells this story of, the girls was watching. So I like to do this swan dive and impress them. And when he hit the water impact pulled his pants down. So he called to his friend, "Hey, Paul, hey, why, Paul, my pants down. Your pants down. Your pants are down. Paul, pull them up." "What, you want me to pull up your pants?" Pulls up his pants. Now the zipper. Ah! He goes, 20 years later, I talk to Paul, I say, "Hey, you remember when you pulled up the zipper and it bit?" "Oh, no, that never happened. I don't remember that at all." And Makia concludes by saying, "Clearly, it made more of an impression on me than it did my friend Paul."
Yeah. Yeah. Now here's a person, he's developing his self-concept
Oh, baby.
with a group of people that were all suffering with leprosy.
All of them, but they're still boys and girls, and there's
Yeah.
still courtship. He got married to another inmate,
Yeah.
a person afflicted with the disease. That developed, took its time, till she started developing an interest in another man.
Oh,
They divorced.
yeah.
He fell into deep depression and decided he wasn't going to take the medication any longer. And he went off with his dogs and hunted pig. Goats up in the mountains. Never took the medicine. The feeling left his feet. The feeling left his fingers. Soon he turned blind. It wasn't because the disease ate his eyesight. It was because he didn't take the medication. Because he was depressed.
Can you
Love.
tell us something about the effects of, the fact that he didn't take the medication and the symptoms came on much stronger? What were some of the situations that he got himself into? Like I remember you talking about the bloody times. Are there any of those times that stand out in your mind that could help people understand what would happen with a person had no feelings in his hands or?
Yeah, the disease, the nerves go numb. You can't feel stuff. So I think what Mark's referring to is somewhere forward in the story. Well, we'll get to it, but he can't feel. He can't feel. He also can't sweat. So he gets overcooked in his own body, and the heat stays in there, so he can basically provoke his own demise by cooking in his own body.
Because with Hansen's disease,
Right.
you don't feel temperature. So if he went to a cold country and had an electric blanket,
Oh boy.
he could easily burn himself
Yikes,
badly. But he wouldn't
yikes.
know.
Okay.
So, or if he was by a stove,
Right.
he wouldn't know if he was burning himself. So he benefited from help and not having to do everything by himself.
The cartilage caved in. He had that problem. His nose looked a little disfigured. The ears start to get weird. The cartilage all over the body just is all messed up. And the circulation gets worse and worse, so that often they have to have toes cut off and feet, or they can't walk anymore. It hurts.
Can you tell about
Sores.
the bony finger?
Yes. Well, again, later on when Makia and I were touring quite a bit, we went to the Olamana Boys' Home. And this is the one time Makia told funny stories. He was always in a great mood. Lovely man. Smart as a whip. And always easy on everybody. Lovely, lovely. Big heart. Except this one time. And the two of us went to the Olamana Boys' prison. Howley Boy, me, went first. They weren't interested in hearing from Howley Boy. Kind of rude. A lot of talking. A lot of throwing at stuff. I sat down. Makia was incensed. I've never seen him this way. He said, "You know what this man has done for me? You know what this man does for all of storytelling in all of Hawaii?" And he went on and lectured them about these things he was proud of me for doing. Me! And then he said, "You think you've got a rough life, huh?" And he started talking about the things that had happened in his life. Like, he has no feeling, so he feels something poking in his fingers. This is the story that Mark... He can't figure out what it is. And he just reaches over. Again, he can't feel his fingers. He can't feel his fingers in his fingers. And so, just something... And he tells those boys, "I pulled my finger bone off my finger. You don't have a rough life." She said, "I don't see. I can't feel. And I earned a BA from UH. I went on, I'm touring the world telling stories. You think I came here today because I want to waste my time telling stories to you? I made something of my life, and you can too. This isn't the end of the story. You're still young, man. So get out of here and make something happen. You can. Yes, you can. If I can, you can."
Oh, gosh. Oh, man.
And they were all just like, he said, "Well, stand up and shake my hand and shake the hand of this Howley boy who brought me over here." And they were a different group of boys walking out of that room than they were the group that walked in.
What always impressed me about him was his voice was so commanding. It was just, you'd go into a gymnasium full of loud kids, and all he had to do was open his mouth and speak, and they hushed and listened to him and were tuned into him. Johnny had that too.
Yeah, we'd always put them, when we had the wild children, it's like, go there and get their attention, make them behave.
Yeah.
Yes, he was like that. And not only his voice, but his physical appearance.
Yeah.
Because, and he would play that up, because he'd wear his sunglasses. And he was so big in his being, but he'd kind of, he'd kind of hunch up like that, and he had the big shoes always. Even when we would dress him in Hawaiian attire, formal hula kahiko, big robe and a big kihei, but he'd still have to wear his shoes because he couldn't really walk on the feet without the shoe.
Right.
And so then he'd tell the kids something like, I'm going to take off my glasses, but I don't have any eyes. And then he'd take off his glasses and they'd all be so scared. So he knew how to work it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was quite talented.
So amazing, so amazing. And Jeff, now that, we have to kind of do this weird maneuvering here because of the chronology, but Makia left Kalaupapa for the reason was he was bored. You said something about that.
Well, by then he'd lost his sight. He just married his second wife, who was a nurse there, who fell in love with him. He says, you want to marry a blind guy with leprosy? No, you don't want to do. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Try to talk her out of it, but then they got married. By then, the disease could be arrested by injection. He took the injection so that he was no longer transmissible. And they gave the residents the option, well, the state will take care of you, but you can live here in Kalaupapa or you can leave. And he was one of the very few who left because most people were afraid of the world that had rejected them. They didn't want to go outside. They didn't want to have people look at them or call them names.
That's right. That's right.
So they stayed there. But he said it was boring. And he was ready to see the world. And he went with his new wife out, started going to UH.
So they moved to Honolulu.
Moved to Honolulu.
All right.
Started going to UH. He took classes in education and in Hawaiian studies.
Right.
He said, nobody taught me what it was to be Hawaiian. I had to go to UH to learn. He learned the language at UH.
What a world.
And the history. And all the stuff he'd been hearing about just from being in the culture.
Right. Now here's a blind man in Honolulu, and he had a white cane. Didn't have his dog yet.
Nobody knew how to. There was this before the edges and inclusion and all those mandates, Chapter 9, all that. No. But he wanted to experience the world, and he wanted to learn stuff. He has a phenomenal mind. He wanted to learn, take in new stuff. So he started going to classes. Nobody could teach him how the classes were. How do you walk over a university? How do you get across a street when there's no signs, no beep, 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 none of that? He'd listen for people and then ask people, could you help me across the street? Every day to get to the university, find his way to the classes. How do you know how many stairs to go up to room 473?
So he went to college. He figured out how to go to college. And he went and, because of the way his fingers were, he couldn't do the Braille. So he had a reader. He had somebody who went with him to all the classes, took the notes, and then I don't know how he did it.
Wow.
But I believe he graduated. Fully did college. So that's the way his mind was.
He wanted to go jogging, so he'd ask people to hold his stick when they jogged and so he could jog around the track. Phenomenal. This is a guy who wanted life, and he got it.
Right.
Great stories.
Well, he was curious. That word kept coming up for us when we were talking about it. He had this desire,
voracious.
this appetite. And now he graduated from university, but you hadn't met him yet.
No. I met him because I was the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Parks and Recreation drama specialist.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yes, I was. Yes. Wonderful position, strange as ever. And I was teaching a storytelling class, and this guy shows up. A big mountain of a guy with a stick and his big sunglasses wrap around. Whatever. Sure, come on in, sit down. I get everybody going, a few ideas and concepts of how to tell a story. And then let's pair up. We'll take an Aesop's fable and just read it and talk to each other. Start to get something on your tongue, and we'll start working with it.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, I say, okay, it's time to switch. Time goes. Everybody's in the corner with Makia. What the heck is the... I go over there. He's taken the Aesop's fable. He put it in Kalihi. All the animals were now mongoose, dog, chicken. They didn't want to leave. They were rolling in the corner.
Yeah, it was a fractured...
Who is this guy?
Right.
I took him to lunch. That was an adventure. Then I said, what is the situation? Well, the good city had gotten federal funds to employ the disabled. Well, they employed them, but they didn't have a job.
Right.
So it was like, we'll meet and talk about what we can do. So he came to the storytelling class. I mean, you got money for this guy? Oh, yeah, we don't know what to do. I do. He's becoming a storyteller. I'm going to put him to work.
Right.
I told Makia, you work for me now. Well, what do? You tell stories. I ain't got no stories. Yeah, you do. What? Little Red Riding Hood. I ain't got that stuff. No, tell. And like I pick him up in my car with his guide dog and take him to summer fun programs for the kids or to senior centers.
Right.
I tell a story, he tells a story. I tell a story, he tells a story. And pretty soon, over months of this kind of pairing, he began to develop a set list, stories that people liked, the audiences laughing, the old people laughing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Right.
You like hear about the time I was supposed to kill the chicken? Makia, you killed that chicken yet? Yeah. Just funny slice of life stuff.
Yeah, now his sense of humor kept coming up when we were talking. And, this is the time now, chronologically, he's left Kalaupapa. He's still married, right? He met you.
Well, he in his bloom at UH. Yeah, sorry to say it. The nurse didn't have the big moundy Hawaiian she could love anymore. Now he was a blooming, on fire, full of insights and new friends and relationships. And he just didn't want to be the same old guy again, and the relationship fell apart.
Jeff,
but he was blooming, and he was full of life.
Let me pour you a cup of tea, and let's start our storytelling now with Makia's sense of humor, okay? And the reason I'm saying this is because you told me a story this morning that I called Stop Moving Around. And the Stop Moving Around story is so perfect because it shows how Makia used himself as the butt, I guess the word is butt, of his jokes.
He was the butt of a lot of his stories.
Right. So can we start there?
Yeah,
Stop moving around?
So in these duets that we do, during as the City and County Honolulu Department of Parks and Recreation drama specialist, I set up the Talk Story Festival, the biggest storytelling event in Hawaii. Makia became like an anchor of that because every year he'd come, with his big shape, and he'd charm the audiences. What generally happened was an audience would look at him,
right.
This big, lumpy guy with kind of weird features.
We're talking about 250 pounds.
Oh,
right?
easy, and he got bigger.
Yeah.
But he's a massive guy with a stick, and kind of, I don't know quite, a little freaky. But then he'd start to talk, and then they'd start to laugh.
Yeah.
And then he'd start to laugh with them laughing, and the laughing would go around until the whole room was this I called it the laugh cycle, where he'd be enjoying the story that was funny that he was telling, and he'd be laughing along with them, and he'd have to pause, and he'd say like this, and they'd get all, it was so much fun. But in that excitement of telling the story and sharing it, sometimes he'd start to shuffle, and then he'd start to shuffle.
Remember, he's blind.
You can't see him nowhere front.
Yeah.
So pretty soon he's like, and the people are like, I can hear it. So I'd get up and like, hey, Makia, they're over here. And what, you guys been jumping around? Stop moving! Again.
Yeah, right. And then another example of that is the Halloween. Because, here Jeff is describing this person who, for all rights, he could belong in the Addams family, if you think about it, right? And he had these, because he knew people were looking at his eyes, or looking at his hands, or looking at his physical form, he knew that Halloween time was the time of being enjoying being scared, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So he starts the story and tells about how hunting for he'e, the octopus, right? And he's like looking, he's got his spear under his arm, and he's looking at the rocks, and the rocks they're smart. So they go into these crevices, and then they pull with their antennas, the legs, they pull in rocks. And they look around and watch for what's going on.
The octopus, right?
So he's looking into the rocks, and they look kind of weird in this one area, and he sees two eyes looking at him, looking at the eyes. Pooh! Octopus! Ah, he got it on the stick. Now, he forgot to bite the head, kill it. So he puts the spear back, and he starts hunting some more, and the octopus is crawling up the spear. The octopus is crawling on his... Because he doesn't feel, the octopus is up in his shoulder. The octopus starts to go in his ear. But because he doesn't feel anymore, when the octopus reaches through his head, and he can only start to see when the leg of the octopus went over his eye, and then he went, whoa! And he yanked! And that's how I lost my eye. And they go to the doctor. And the doctor give them back. You like see. Now I know some of you kids are going to feel this is a little heavy. So you don't have to look. You cover your eyes. That's okay. No shame. But if you like, you look and enjoy. I count to 3. 1. Wow. The kids are like this. They're freaking. Yeah. And he pull. Ah! And the kids.
But they want to look.
Yeah, they want to look. They don't want to look. They want to look. And then he talks about how, and he literally had the eye. There was no eye on one side. And he talked about how the muscles and the movements and stuff. They put in a glass eye, but pretty soon my left eye seeing where my right eye is looking at me. So I don't like it. I take them out. But they say, Mr. Malo, if you like, we can give you back your eye. I got him. Halloween time. You come my house. I polish them up. I put them out on the porch. Because I like see you.
I like see you.
It's kind of morbid, but it's so, I mean, who makes fun of themselves in that way? And who else could?
Right.
And what I watched over and over and over and over and over is that his humanity and self-depreciation and joy in the joy of telling them stories would win them over, and the children that recoiled from him when he walked in, after 30 minutes, would be running up and giving him big hugs, Uncle Makia.
Right.
That's a transformation.
Yeah. Everybody knew him. Everybody who listened to his story.
You want to talk about people loving the disabled, the differences, the disfigured. Every time.
Now, when he began working with you and you were traveling around to the different programs and stuff, of course, Jeff being a professional storyteller, he had many, many opportunities to go to festivals and to be part of Neighbor Island touring.
We did.
And mainland touring and the Pacific. So opportunities are always coming up. Now, Jeff, working with Makia, is also responsible for caring for Makia at the same time. So you're moving a large man on a tour into schools, into community centers, into festivals, and there's some stories there that are just amazing. It's when you're a producer, you're doing everything.
So I want to tell a story.
All right.
Now I'm on a roll.
Yeah.
Makia Malo stories. So in 1992, we went to Samoa. We went to Guam, Rota, Tini, and Saipan, so Micronesia. We're in Guam. He says, Chef, my partial, part of his denture, it's like it hooks around the tooth, but the wire had gotten loose. So the partial is flapping around in his mouth. He says, it's hard to talk. And I'm going out and I notice that it's a tent. There's lots of people, but there's one kid in the front row who just thinks he's watching TV. So look to his mom and like talking really loud, like we don't hear him, like he's not like right there. It's like this annoying little brat, would you just cool out? So then Makia comes on and he said, yeah, and my partials start to come out of my mouth. So I was like biting after.
It's in the middle of the show.
Right when the guy turned and this kid goes, ah! Teeth are flying. He tried to bite me. The next show, of course, it fell out on the floor. Jeff, what? My partial. I said, where'd it go? And the kid in the front goes, right there. I pick it up. He was so embarrassed. I'm like, oh, come on. You'll tell it to the lady in the art center, and you'll be telling it on stage a day after that. Which is exactly what he did.
Okay, now there's a moment, and I remember this part of the story where Jeff's in Guam and he's meeting some of the other Hawaiian performers that are there. But
Roselle Bailey.
There's Roselle Bailey, Kumuhula, and there's a thing that's going on, which is storyteller and producer there that they weren't fully respected, and for me that's an important piece because you guys are there, you're very special guests. What happened?
Well, somebody did a miscount. There were so many names, and there were 2 left off. So there was 2 left off of the hotel reservation forms, 2 left off of all the buses going to and fro places, all the tours of the islands. There's 2 seats, more people than there are seats. They just forgot us. So it made us always left out, never included.
Right.
Even like handing out certificates.
Yeah.
We forgot you again after a week.
Yeah.
So we were we were there for the Guam Micronesian Folk Festival performance thing. The best part of this whole experience was that they got us left during the day in the middle of the festival in the heat of Guam. Again, the man cooks in his own juices. He can't get overheated. And I'm responsible.
Right.
So I'm trying to find a place where he's going to be cool and entertained and respected. I find a place with a traditional tattooist. She's tattoo. Micronesia and lots of places where Japanese invaded little islanders, they would put on really heavy tattoos. Not just like little designs, but like big, bold patterns on their arms to make themselves ugly in the eyes of the invading army.
Wow.
So she was good at doing that kind of thing. And then Makia comes along. Well, I'd check in with him, then I'd go away, and I'd come back. And when I came back at one of them, he goes, Jeff. What? Jeff, I think I want to get a tattoo. You do? Yeah. I think I get a tattoo. What kind of tattoo? Big tattoo. How big? What are you talking about? I think I want it to be on my whole back. What? I want a shark. I want the mouth of the shark to be open. So that you're looking at a big shark's teeth.
Yeah.
You sure?
On his whole back.
And he got it. And it literally, he's big. It was a big tattoo, like butt to shoulders.
Shark.
Yeah, I asked him, so how'd that go when you got home and showed your wife? Well, I got home, I said, honey, yeah, I brought you a souvenir from our trip. Oh, shut your eyes. Oh, she's imagining a ring or a doily or a necklace. He turned around and he pulled up his shirt and he goes, you can look now. And there's this pause and then there's this. Surprise.
No, but there was something else that happened in Guam, right? There was this other story.
That was in Tinian.
Yeah.
Tinian is the site, and we were on. Okay, so Makia and I. Here's the scene. We're in a Volkswagen with the director of the Tinian Arts Center, who is driving the car with his feet, playing an ukulele with Makia in the passenger seat, and they're singing a Hawaiian song, full volume to a ukulele accompaniment, high on tuva. Tuva is the fermented palm coconut wine.
Yeah.
You slit the flour, it drips in, it makes a white milky stuff, tuva. It's so popular. We were the most popular people in a bar in Saipan the next day when we brought tuba. We have tuba. So here we are, bombing down this runway. It was the runway used by the Enola Gay to go drop bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The runway's still there.
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa.
What a scene.
Whoa. Now,
Never forget. I was in the back seat singing along.
yeah, you were learning new songs, right?
With the secretary from the Consortium for Pacific Arts and Culture, this little Oriental lady who was like...
And you kept saying, this is
trying
art,
to take
this
notes
is
and
art.
had her clipboard together,
Yeah.
was petrified.
Yeah, this is a cultural experience.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I'm bonding with the natives.
Yeah.
Don't put that in the show.
Right, you didn't have to explain that. No ways. But now you guys come back, and then there's the tattoo, and he shows the tattoo, to his third wife.
Third wife,
Angel
Ann.
Ann.
Angel Ann. He
Angel
called her
Ann.
an Angel Ann all the time because she made such a difference in his life.
And she taught you about bandages.
So when we were going to the Guam, Rota, Tinian, Saipan trip, she sat me down for, it seemed like 3 days. It was probably an hour. Telling me the cuts that he had, the open wounds, needed bandages. This is how you bandage them, A, B, C, ointments, then go like this, breathe every 3 hours, just on and on and on. Okay, and here's the ointments to make sure you don't miss it. They don't heal so well. You got to really watch it. So we get into the Guam hotel room. Finally, they forgot it, but then they finally made one up. I get Makia settled, and I go, "Oh, Makia, I'm supposed to handle your wounds." "Oh yeah, look at it. Does it look red?" "No, it doesn't look red." "Forget it." Next day, "Hey, I'm supposed to look at your wounds. Does it look red?" "Doesn't look red." "Forget it." 2 weeks later, we got back from the tour. She's like, "You did such a good job. Makia's wounds look so healthy and bright. They're not red at all." "It's because you taught me."
Wow, now, this seems like a perfect marriage because here's somebody who's
She loved him.
she's a caregiver.
She wants to make sure
Yeah,
everything goes right.
right.
She's letting her most cherished friend into the hands of Jeff.
But she loved him so much that when she's sitting in the audience, she's shouting out the next story that she wants him to tell.
In the beginning, she did do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she'd fluff his collar and sometimes come up on stage.
Right.
Finally, I had to say, "Look, Ann, please, the edge of the stage is there, and I'll take it from there. Just leave the show to Makia and me. We'll do it fine."
So hundreds of shows, thousands and thousands and thousands of children and adults, years and years of storytelling in many, many parts of the world. Finally, he's a special, special guest at the United Nations.
He spoke at the United Nations. Kofi Annan was in attendance, and he told Katie's store, among others of his stories. It was a exhibit about leprosy all over the world. He also was featured at the National Storytelling Conference, International Storytelling Center's National Storytelling Festival, the biggest storytelling event in America. He was featured. He was the darling of all the press people. He, of course, couldn't care less and didn't really know what was going on. He just was Makia. But they just raved about him, and he made lots of friends who remembered him. You don't forget Makia Malo.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you do forget, you can always buy his book. My Name is Makia by Makia Malo and Pamela Young. But there's one aspect of his life that Jeff and I think we agree on this, is a most important thing to share with you, our Sparky Would Go audience, which is how did Makia come to value his life, his story, and this world of talking story, listening, talking story, and developing that into something that was the real jewel of what he shared with people. How did he get to be somebody that valued? That seems to be right from the beginning, right? Talk story was the name.
I think decades on porches with nothing to do, no TV, nowhere to go, no future, just the human exchange of life, the little things, the little joys, the little pleasures, the little aggravations, the gossip.
Oh yeah, the gossip.
The talk story culture.
Right, right.
It's disappearing quickly with shows like this.
Well,
not all like this. The other ones.
well, and how much of it is listening and hearing
Yeah.
and then responding with your own experience. And we're hoping that Sparky would go. We'll change a little bit of that course. But at the very end of his life, he discovered something about his life. And this thing, if you could remember the story of Zippy's in Honolulu and what that really brought up for
Okay,
Makia.
it was his 80th birthday. Angel Ann threw a party. Zippy's is easy in Honolulu. Everybody knows where it is, and they all came. There were 24 people who loved Makia to celebrate his party. She said, but Makia, after they all came through, because he can't see, so they're all introducing themselves in a line to say hello, and we're so happy for you, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, but there's one guest that hasn't introduced himself to you. Oh yeah, who's that? The Hawaiian starts to come. It's his brother, Billy. Bill flew in from Maui to be at the event. And in Hawaiian, he starts the lineage of their parents and the other brothers and sisters, all gone, all dead, and ends by saying, your brother Bill, along with you, the only surviving member of a family from Papakolea. It's Billy. Now Makia, before he tells his response, talks about how when he was raised, you learned hula, but you didn't do that kind of hula because that kind of hula was too feminine, to mahu, sissy. You didn't want to be that, so all the boys stopped. They didn't. You don't want to be a sissy. You had to be a man. He said, in our family, being a man means you never said you were sorry, and you never said, I love you. He said, I never said I loved you. I lost a sister, a brother, a little brother, my mother, my father. I never in my whole life heard them say, I love you to me. I never said, I love you to them. That was not what men do. And here I am, 80 years old, the only one alive from the family left is here. I just jumped up. I said, Billy boy, Billy. And I threw my arms around him. I said, I love you, Bill. I love you. I love you with all my heart. And he said he heard Bill say, I love you too, Makia. He said, we're all going to go. It'll happen sooner than you think. If you can learn anything from me, all I can say is don't wait. If you know somebody you love, if your heart is with them, tell them. Express your love. Tell the people you love that you love them. Real men do that.
Oh, yeah.
Makia Malo was a giant. He was a huge character. There's never going to be another one like him. There is a hole in the firmament. The heavens are not the same. I lost a giant. The sequoias have fallen. The world is empty. But we all go on. I love you, Makia Malo. I loved him with my heart, and I love talking about him to you. Aloha. Thank you, Makia.
Sweet Makia, very fun. And just so endearing, so caring. You know, he had the full range, and he was not shy as a man about sharing any of it. He could be very tender, very, very intimate, revealing lots of deep things about himself and his thinking, thoughtfulness, that he had. And then he could be very powerful and, very adamant.
A pillar in my life has disappeared. A star in my heaven is dark. Storytelling in Hawaii has lost a giant. How many people heard this marvelous, gentle man tell a story? And remembering that joy giant, he lives on, right? Aloha to Makia. And so we must turn and go on with living. But I remember here with you a few moments with my friend Makia Malo.